Just go solo.
This is Solo Travel Talk. Your solo travel advisor is Astrid Clements.
Welcome. I'm Astrid Clements, founder of Astrid Solo Travel Advisor, and this is my first podcast, Solo Travel Talk with Astrid. I'm very excited about starting this podcast because I have some great ideas that I want to share for the solo traveler.
And my name is Catherine O'Brien. I'll be here. I am Astrid's producer, and we welcome you to this very first episode of Solo Travel Talk. We're going to cover a lot of topics today, especially what is the purpose of this podcast. Astrid, you are so passionate about this topic, and you have really dedicated so much of your life to solo travel.
Well, thank you. The purpose of the podcast is to inspire people, to instruct people on how to enjoy and benefit from solo travel. I have a tremendous passion for this, and I've got a lot of experience. I love sharing, so this is the forum one of the forums that I'll be using to share all of my ideas, my tips, my tricks, what not to do, what to do, etc. So, welcome.
Astrid, how long have you been going solo?
Well, my first trip was when I was 18 years old. It was part of a work internship through LSU, my university. And like a lot of college students would take these summer trips and earn credits, etc. Well, I come from a background where my mother and her side of the family are from Berlin, Germany. I could always understand German. I was raised listening to it. My grandmother had a big influence on me, but I never was really forced to learn to speak the language fluently. So when I was at LSU, I was taking some German courses because I kind of wanted a minor in it. And they offered this program. So I thought, well, I will go. And they had placed me in a German department store. I went on this trip to get my German fluent. And I must tell you, that was the trip that triggered my love for solo travel. Now, the first part of the trip, oh my gosh, culture shock like you've never known. I mean, I get off the plane in Amsterdam. I have to catch a train to Nuremberg. I was so innocent. I didn't even know I had to change money. I thought they just took dollars. It was kind of... So everything was a big shock to me. Pulling in the train station in Nuremberg, getting to where I would be living. Shock after shock, just the climate, the people were different, the food was different. Even though I was raised in this half German environment when I was very young, it was a big shock. It took me, really, the first 3 weeks was just, I thought, oh my God. And my father even said, do you want to come home? And I said, no, I don't want to come home. So I kind of pushed through the shock of it, and I you do adjust. And I started taking little side trips to Vienna, to Munich, and one of the trips I took to Salzburg in the beautiful Lake District, and I thought to myself, I'm coming back to Salzburg. There's something about this place that it really speaks to me. By the time the trip was at the end, I was speaking fluent German, and I was loving Europe, and I was loving exploring and experiencing different things. So that was my first trip. And then I really probably started traveling solo regularly about 35 years ago because there were either business reasons that I did it. I still have family in Berlin, Germany that I visit. I have friends that, I've visited in Europe. So it's either been family or pleasure or business, whether it's in the United States or all over the world. And being a very curious person who I've always loved to go places. I don't know. I think just the motion of going somewhere, being in a different place has always been so much fun to me, even with some of the hassles. 35 years, I'd basically say I've done a lot of it, a whole lot of it, and especially in the last couple of years because I've been retired since 2005. It's given me more opportunity to do it, and so I am going places where I've always wanted to go, like China for 5 weeks, Russia. I just completed a 50-day around the world solo trip, which was the most memorable solo trip I've ever taken. It was fabulous. 35 years of a lot of solo travel.
So from that first trip that you went on, what are some of the benefits of being solo? I think a lot of people get afraid of it, but it seems like there's got to be some benefits. If you're so passionate about it, what do you say are some of the benefits?
Okay. Well, first of all, you have complete freedom. You have the freedom to decide exactly what you want to do, where you want to go, how long you want to stay somewhere, what you don't want to do. So you can plan your whole itinerary agenda and do it at your own pace. And for people who are naturally independent, like to do things, take risks, they just naturally enjoy this if they like to travel, okay? So that's first and foremost. You can do whatever you want when you want to do it. Then secondly, I think that when you travel solo, your senses become heightened. You don't have to communicate with either your companion who's traveling with you or a group or other people. So you're able to basically hear more. You see more things. Like, for instance, this meal that when I was in Venice here recently, I went to a 1-star Michelin restaurant. Beautiful restaurant, and I had lunch. It was very affordable, $60 with 2 bellinis and several courses.
Ooh la la!
It was very memorable, from the presentation to the interior of the restaurant to the quality of the food, and all I can think about is those sauces. Oh my God, and I never would have thought Italians would focus on sauces. You typically think about the French with all the different sauces, but this was great. But I got to focus on the taste of the food more and everything. Even though traveling with my husband or in groups, I enjoy that too. But when you're by yourself, you think about things more. Things pop out to you more. Your senses really are heightened. And I think that is something that makes your trips more memorable and a very intense, deep experience, which I personally enjoy.
I think our listeners could have guessed the extra freedom in being by themselves, but I love what you're saying about the heightened your senses being heightened, because that's a lot of what we're going to travel for in the first place, is that different experience, to be really transported.
Yes. And so, when you are solo, you're just more in tune. And that kind of leads me to another thing. I have a philosophy. I try to live this way because it seems to keep me more confident and just happier, is to live in the moment. And when you're traveling solo and you don't have, others around you or whatever, you just kind of naturally live in this moment. That's wonderful because you're not worried about what happened in the past or what's going to happen in the future. You just learn to savor the moment. And you do this when you solo travel. It's just kind of part and parcel of it. I mean, I'm sure others would say that to traveling with a companion or others, that you have it too. But I think you have it more this way because it's just you and what's happening to you right at that moment. And I think that's a benefit because it it helps you grow as a person. Solo travel definitely heightens your problem-solving skills and your patience, because you have to do it all. Now, you can have your concierge help you, and you can pay for different things to make things easier, but you're really there alone. But the more you do it, you grow as a person, and it's very enriching on a lot of different levels.
Well, you kind of tapped in what I was going to just ask is, does going solo make things harder?
Yes and no. I mean, there are lots of things that you have to do to basically deal with what makes it more difficult. First and foremost, I think that because you have to do everything by yourself, you're responsible for everything. It can be more stressful, and it can actually be more tiring. I think that you need to plan, do a lot of research, make to-do lists, just stay organized in how you prepare for the trip, how you want to execute the trip, and that will relieve, some of the things that possibly could happen, or just some of the stress. Because if you, say, have a packing list, and you go down the packing list, of which I have a very good packing list on my website, Astrid Solo Travel Advisor. If you have this packing list that you can use when you're packing, you won't forget anything. If you go through it and check it off, you'll have everything, okay? And that is, first, just one simple thing that helps you de-stress. Because if you leave and you've forgotten, say, one part of your flight itinerary and it's not in your phone or whatever, if you leave just one thing, I mean, that can set it off quick to where, oh my God, you know what I'm saying? What's going to happen? And all of that. So that is one thing, can be a little, but you can mitigate it with different types of things. Also, it can be more costly. Solo travel, you don't have anybody to share the taxi expense with, and different things. You don't have, anybody else to help you basically mitigate that kind of thing. And then if you take a tour or if you take a cruise, they charge you what's called a single supplement. And it's a lot of times you almost pay double, or you pay
Really?
you pay fare and a half. And that's one of the reasons why too I developed, maybe not totally this website, but I want to show how you can do it and travel solo and not take tours or whatever, unless you really want to do it, and do it affordably and it not be more expensive. It's unfair, but that's exactly the way it's priced. I have done a lot of research on how to travel affordably but still luxury, because that here again is the focus of my website. My blog is affordable luxury ideas for the solo traveler, and I'm getting ready to also in the future launch products and services. But the cost, if you don't budget, and I have a lot of budgeting tips, a budget guide, if you don't budget, it can be more expensive. It is more expensive. Okay, so that's two givens that are
facts. The facts life of traveling solo.
Yes.
Well, and also you have kind of teased some of our listeners for some of the episodes that are going to be coming up on this podcast, because I know you've got a lot of tips that address those kinds of things that you were just talking about. Some of the factors that go into traveling solo.
Oh well, let me tell you. I can talk and talk about this topic, and I probably will be blogging for, I told somebody the other day, I'll be blogging in heaven. But some of my future episodes will be talking about safety tips for the solo traveler, packing tips. These two, you would be surprised how when people talk about what bugs them about travel, whether it's solo or not, what stresses them out, these are the top two. And packing is right there under it. I mean, the safety, unfortunately, with terrorism and just, what's going on in the world, it's become, the number one factor. And I've got a lot of great suggestions on how to deal with it. And I love sharing those because it helps people overcome too much fear. Okay, then another episode that I really feel like is very valuable for planning a solo trip is budgeting. And a lot of people really don't do it. They think, oh, well, I'll spend maybe 10,000 most or 5,000 or whatever. But I actually go through a pre-trip budget. I have a spread, a nice little guide, and I pencil in everything that I can think about. I get the hard cost in terms of the flight cost and the accommodations, but I try to pencil in the logistics in terms of whether I want to have somebody, a pickup service at the airport, bring me to the hotel. Try to pencil in all these expenses and know approximately what the trip actually will cost. Then what I do is, and I won't go into all of that, but
that's a future episode.
Yeah, oh, that really is. But it really helps it be a better trip. You don't waste as much money, and you really have a clear picture. So I love talking about budgeting, even though nobody really likes to do it. Okay, then also cultural do's and don'ts for specific solo travel destinations. That's big, I think, and people should know that before they go. How to choose the right solo-friendly hotel or accommodations. Solo travel trip planning tips. I have a good guide, and basically how to plan a successful solo trip. What to do when things go wrong, because they do go wrong. Also, dining solo, tips on how to overcome being uncomfortable when you're eating alone, what to look for in a solo-friendly restaurant. That's one of the big things that is a deterrent a lot of times for people that actually think they really want to go. The thought of eating by themselves, but it's changing. There's so many restaurants now with communal tables or tables around an open kitchen, little banquette type of twosome tables, which is great for solo travelers. And they're not putting you by the busing station anymore.
It's not a sacrifice to be
No, because there are more and more people doing it. When to use and the value of using private guides and drivers. A lot of people don't think to even do that, but there's some benefits in that, especially in the countries where the language barrier is pretty tough. There are not a lot of people that speak English. You can't read the language. And usually in those countries, it's very, very affordable. So, I'll go into that because I've used it in the past, and they had a great experience. And also, and I talked a little bit about this, is what is and how to deal with culture shock. Because culture shock, you experience it everywhere. Even if you go to another city in the United States, if you're an American, it's different. The Southwest is different from the Deep South. And it takes you, a little bit to kind of slide into it and like it as much, and you just kind of get in tune. And that's important in terms of having a really great solo travel experience. These are just some of the things I've got a lot to talk about.
Well, Astrid, I'm noticing from the future episodes that you're planning, there's kind of a theme to me, and that is overcoming obstacles to traveling. You're trying to help people get past any sort of barrier that they might have that's maybe holding them back from taking the plunge and going by themselves out to see the world.
Exactly. And I can tell you there are a lot of people that are fearful of this, and there's some very real fears. So they're not unjustified. But the biggest one is the fear of being lonely or feeling lonely, and a lot of people have that. But if you plan and you execute your plans, and you keep doing it, you don't feel lonely. There are so many things you can be doing, and especially now with your smartphones and social media. It's not like it used to be. And I always say, if you can learn how to be happy alone, then you're a much happier person. And this teaches you or helps you understand how to be happy alone and how to enjoy just being or observing or whatever. So that's a big fear.
I think that when you go to another culture, two things happen. You get to really examine your own culture because you can see those stark differences, and you get that experience of seeing our commonalities amongst everybody. It's like you get those two visions at the same time.
Oh, yeah. And one thing I always try to do, and I do this on purpose, I try to be a good ambassador for America, because we kind of have a bad reputation in some areas that we're just, we don't appreciate other people's cultures and, just a lot of things. So I'm very sensitive to it. I try to be very respectful. I try to also be a good person myself in my actions, and even to the way I dress. I try to dress conservatively so it's respectful for them. I don't just dress like a tourist. Dress conservatively, blend in, so they'll have a good impression. Be a good ambassador for us, and then also understand them and make friendships. And let me tell you, I've made a lot of friendships. I have a lot of Facebook friends all over the world.
And there's really nothing quite as enriching as travel. It's such a unique way to enrich your life.
Absolutely. I mean, to me, it's really, if you're lucky enough to be able to do it, it's part of your educational experience, especially with the world becoming more and more globalized now. We have to understand each other. And there's nothing like going there. I mean, you can read, novels or factual books or whatever about destinations. You can watch it on TV. But there is nothing like being on the streets of Hanoi, eating some delicious street food, watching these people, like this lady cooking soup right there with just two little appliances and making the most wonderful pho. I mean, you can't believe it. But, you could see that or read about it, but just see it. It touches you.
Experience it.
Yeah, it really touches you. And by eating her food and paying her for it, it's helping her. And that's wonderful about travel. So, you learn, you're enriched, you affect others, with what you do and how you act and what you say. It teaches you more personal skills, like I shared, in terms of, you have to problem solve. And it's I'm going to get this person to do it. You have to do it. But that's all good. It's liberating. You know what I'm saying? You just feel in the end, bring it on. I can do anything. And this helps you actualize and practice that. And it's fun. I mean, to me, it's just so interesting, invigorating to be in another place. It's something that I really enjoy. A lot of people don't, and really solo travel and travel itself is not attractive to everyone. But I think it's great. Once you get through some of the things that you think make you not like it, and then if you're lucky enough to do it, it'll be some of the best memories that you have.
People who are listening to this show are going to learn all the skills that you have and learn all the tips and tricks that you have that are going to make that even a more pleasurable experience.
Well, I hope so.
I know so.
Oh.
I know you've got some really phenomenal adventures under your belt, and you've been doing this for a very long time. So tell our listeners, Do you have an example of one travel experience that you know would not have been the same had you been with somebody else, that the really being solo is what made it the memory that it is for you now?
One thing that comes to mind, an experience that I had on this around the world trip that I took at the beginning of this year, is actually part of the launch of my website. One of my destinations was Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates. It was one of the 3 Muslim countries that I chose to go to. I had previously been to Dubai about 15 years ago, but I wanted to go to all these different cultures and blah, blah, blah. So, and Dubai is, like a brand new city, and it's actually touted as the city where the people individually are the most well off. And so I wanted to go back to the UAE because it was very interesting the first time I went, because they were just building up the medical areas and the tech areas. They call it, I think it's Health City and Tech City. I can't totally remember. But so I went to Abu Dhabi, and when I go, I always try to find a nice souvenir or something that is very characteristic of that place. And I like to try to find things that have been personally made by somebody, or something, not just something that's manufactured by, a company or whatever. So I was having a hard time seeing, there just didn't seem to be that many crafts. I mean, you've got the souk and the gold, souk, and you've got a lot of different types of merchants, etc. But it didn't seem to be a lot of indigenous crafts. Some basket making, some rugs and ceramics, but I really couldn't. I couldn't find a place. But I had put one of the places I wanted to visit there was the cultural center for women and craft making. So I thought that that's going to be the perfect place for me to find out, first of all, really what are the specific unique crafts made here, and also learn more about women and women in a Muslim country. Because being a Westerner, we listen and we read, and I'm very.
We might have some presumptions.
Yeah, and I'm very open-minded. So I really, in terms of women, I really have always just had a lot of questions. I thought, well, going here, maybe I'll get a little bit better insight. Well, I hit the jackpot because, first of all, the young woman who was running this cultural center was just delightful. She was very well educated. She was very gracious. She spent an hour and a half with me. We went through the whole museum and showed me the different stages of an Arab wife in the UAE. It was just so interesting, from being born to when they were a grandmother. So I love that. Plus, I was so comfortable with her. After a while, I said, I have a lot of questions that I want to ask that I don't have anybody to ask. And I said, you don't have to answer them, in any way. If this is outside of your purview, or if I might be offensive, I understand, Oh, she said, no, go ahead. So I began to ask her, do you really like wearing the abaya? Do you like being covered like this? I asked her, how do you feel about your husband having multiple wives? And all of these hard questions. She gave the most eloquent answers, and it all kind of fit in place. Now, it's hard for a Westerner to understand that, but in this culture. So that was a wonderful experience. And then after that, she took me to where all of these women were making the different rugs and the different things. So I ended up buying a couple of things. But if I would have been with somebody else or in a group, I would have never had that opportunity. I probably wouldn't have asked her those questions because, the person I was with would probably say, you better not do that or whatever.
You might have felt self-conscious to be so direct.
Exactly. And I would have, because one thing about when you travel solo, you meet people, you think you're going to be alone, but if you're comfortable or if you kind of have a relaxed presence about you, things kind of happen. It's kind of, I always say if you're doing things you like to do, that other people like to do, birds of a feather flock together. So you meet a lot of interesting people. And, you're alone when you want to be. And then there's always something that comes up or, and it's really, it's a cool phenomenon, I think. So that, to answer your question, yes, I don't think that experience would have been the same if anybody else would have been traveling with me.
And it's okay to start small as a solo traveler.
Absolutely. And I really do not recommend anybody who's never done this to just go off and go to 5 different cities or go around the world. I mean, you really do kind of have to get used to it. So, I live in New Orleans. I know I have a good friend who had never done it before. She's a recent divorcee. She follows my blog and she's on my website, etc. And she communicated with me, I'm going to do it. You've inspired me to do it. So she decided she was going to go to New Orleans, which is, 60 miles from Baton Rouge, and spend the weekend. Well, when she came back, she wrote me the longest email and said, I had the greatest time, Astrid. You inspired me to do it. She told me everything that she had done. She said, and, thanks. And that's, you need to start small, a couple of days at the most, or say you want to go a spa weekend. That's a good place. Somewhere that's, your environment is pretty well controlled. You don't have to do too much in terms of figuring out what you want to do, where you want to eat, what you want to wear. I mean, get used to it.
It's because it sounds like it's a little bit of an art and a skill to be managing all these travel, for anybody to manage the aspects of travel. So it's like you're building up the experiences on a smaller scale, a little bit more controlled scale, and you're giving yourself little successes to build up to the bigger trips.
Yes, I would have never gone solo around the world 30 years ago. I just wouldn't. So yes, that's. I think that's the way to do it, and especially, I mean, there are a lot of people, or they're a certain type of person who is just naturally independent like me and love to just, go off and explore. But most of the people are more reserved or shyer or just not sure. And so, you have to take it slow. Even if it's a day trip somewhere by yourself, that is a start.
You clearly have a lot of passion for this topic. You've got your blog, you've got a website, now you have a podcast, you're on all kinds of social media. And since this is the first episode of the show, I'm just curious, what do you hope that the listener really gets from this podcast experience?
Well, first and foremost, valuable information, because that's really important. You have to understand lots of aspects of the solo traveler experience. So I do hope that I share a lot of good, valuable information and you learn something. Then secondly, really how to experience solo travel that is both affordable and luxurious at the same time. This is where my real experience lies, and this is exactly what my website focuses on. And this is just starting. I just launched this website in January. So, I'm going to be building this through the years to come. So I hope you follow me. I also hope you follow me on social media. Also on the website, I forgot to say this, if you have a particular question, I do have a section called Ask Astrid, and you can shoot me the question, and I'll be happy to answer that.
Well, and if it's a really good question, maybe you'll answer it on a future podcast.
Well, that's a good idea.
Actually, yeah.
That's a real good idea. And again, just kind of wrapping up, I hope to help people learn the skills to be able to do this and to have, successful or have enjoyable solo travel experiences.
And to do it.
Yeah, well, and that was kind of the way I want to wrap it up.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I'll take it. Cut that out. I'll cut that out.
No, well, I just, I want people, if you don't have anybody to travel with, or you just want to go somewhere, just do it. Like Nike said, do it. And like I say, Astrid Solo Travel Advisor, just go solo. Because I can tell you, being solo is really not the reason anymore not to travel.
Well, I don't think we can say anything better than that. Thank you so much, Astrid.
Oh, well, thank you for, Catherine, doing this. And here again, I didn't mention the URL, but Astrid Solo Travel Advisor, my URL is very simple, astridtravel.com.
That does it for the inaugural episode of Solo Travel Talk. You heard Astrid mention her packing list on this show. You can now get that by going to her website, astridtravel.com. Right there on the homepage, there's a place to download. Just go to astridtravel.com and get her amazing packing list that's going to take the stress out of that part of your trip. Thank you so much for listening, and we look forward to seeing you next week on Solo Travel Talk.
Thank you for listening to Solo Travel Talk. Follow Astrid on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. To learn more about Astrid or Solo Travel Advisors, visit her website, astridtravel.com.